Welcome back to the Examine Life, Gen Z Engages Philosophy. Today we're exploring a topic that many young people struggle with but don't always talk about, which is how spirituality can be a source of healing for challenges regarding mental health, physical health, and overall well-being in our day-to-day lives. Our guest today is someone who has dedicated his career to studying the intersection of faith, spirituality, and well-being. Dr. Harold Koenig is the director of the Center for Spirituality, Theology and Health at Duke University. He is a professor of psychiatry and behavioral sciences and an associate professor of medicine, and his research has shaped how we understand the role of faith in healing. Dr. Koenig, thank you for being here. To start, could you introduce yourself and share a little bit about the work you do?
Thank you, Delara, and thank you for having me on your podcast here. Yes, I'm a professor of psychiatry and associate professor of internal medicine here at Duke University Medical Center in Durham, North Carolina. And I've been a professor here for almost 30 years now, and have been spending most of my time seeing patients and conducting research on the relationship between religion, spirituality, and health. So that's an area that I've spent a lot of time studying, trying to objectively observe the connections between a person's religious faith and their mental health, their social health, their physical health, and their overall well-being. It was something that I started to study many years ago when I was a little bit older than you, Delara, but not much. I was interested in how people cope with, deal with the traumas and the struggles in their life. As a young physician, I was taking care of patients, and I was curious about how they were coping with their physical health problems, with their illness, which was often creating a great deal of disability, of suffering, of pain. And so I asked them, what do you do to help you to cope with all of this trauma in your life, all of this suffering? And they would often say that it was their religious faith, that praying helped, that their connection to their church, their pastor, the people in the church praying for them, their pastor coming to visit them. So I heard this over and over again. And I was curious about it because I had not gotten any training in medical school about the role that religion played in people's lives or in their ability to cope with health problems and whether that affected the outcome of their health problems. So I thought, well, let's just systematically look at this, measure a person's religious involvement, measure their health and well-being, and their medical outcomes, which we can easily do. There are measures to assess, actually, in terms of numbers, quantitatively, a person's religious involvement and also their medical outcomes. And so that's when I started studying this. And over the 30 years, it's been really, really exciting to do this research and to bring other major universities along with me in this research, including Harvard. They have a center now on spirituality and health that I work with the investigators there to do research, to teach, and to publish articles in this field. One example is that today, the New York Times wrote an article on an area that I've been studying for many years on, and I was quoted a couple of times in the article, and my team at Harvard also was quoted. So that was today in the New York Times. And tomorrow morning, I will be debating on NPR the question of, is religion the cure for loneliness? Is religion the cure for loneliness? So there'll be a debate tomorrow morning. Actually, it's been recorded, but it's broadcasting on NPR, National Public Radio, and myself and the senator from Connecticut, Chris Murphy, the U.S. senator from Connecticut, Chris Murphy, are on the side that are saying, yes, religion is the cure for loneliness. And then there's the Freedom from Religion Foundation president, who is an atheist on the other side, and also another atheist who's written lots of books. So we're debating tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock a.m. If any of you want to listen to that on NPR. So it's been so much fun, and now I do a lot of teaching in addition to the research, and so that's kind of
Yeah.
where I'm at.
I'll definitely make sure to check that out. That's going to be really interesting to hear. And it kind of raises the question that I think maybe a lot of atheists have, or maybe a lot of adolescents have, who today kind of feel disconnected from traditional religion, but they still seem to crave like meaning and purpose in their lives. How would you define spirituality in a way that sort of makes sense for them?
Well, I talk more about religion because religious beliefs and practices are really the power behind all of this. It's not so much spirituality that somebody picks and chooses for themselves what they want to believe. Religion is hard. It requires things of you. It demands things, lifestyles, leading a moral and ethical life. And that's hard to do, especially when you're young and full of life. It's very hard to do, but religion demands it of you. And why is that? It's because those demands and those rules about life and moral values, they promote your good. They promote your flourishing, your happiness, your well-being. That's why they're there. If you ignore them, you're going to suffer. There's just no way around that. It's been that way for thousands of years, really since the beginning of probably human time. And it's true today. Things have not changed. If you don't obey those laws and rules, if you don't abide by them, you're going to suffer. And while in the immediate time, it may feel good and it may be great, it doesn't last. I mean, when I was young, I wanted something that would last, not just be over with or something I'd become addicted to or I'd be dependent on. I wanted something that would last for years, my whole lifetime. And, it's really true. Religion produces. It produces what you need, which is anyway, so that's, I guess my personal experience is I was going through a divorce and, I was depressed and I didn't know what was going on. I was a young physician. I had some mental health problems earlier, and that was hard. That was really hard. And when we divorced, that really threw me for a spin. So I turned to my own religious faith, and it just transformed my life. So I wanted to study this. I wanted to see, has anybody else experienced this, what I've experienced? Because it was so fulfilling. I had so much joy, and it lasted. It just didn't, and there were no side effects of it, so to speak. I did have to, abide by the religious teachings, but that was easy compared to what I was struggling with before. And the joy and the peace that I got out of it was just remarkable. And I'm talking 40 years ago this happened. So for the last 40 years, I've really had a life that I could only describe as an abundant life that has been full of purpose, full of meaning. Really, somebody said that there was a kind of a hole in your heart, that people try to fill with. We're born with this hole in our heart people try to fill with another person, the love of your life, drugs, alcohol, sex. And it seems like it works, but it doesn't. It doesn't work for the long term. And I wanted the long term. And that hole in your heart is only filled by one thing, and that's your relationship with God. God is the only one who can fill that hole in your heart.
Well, yeah, that's really powerful. And I guess like it is true through the lens of people crave like the immediate, response, like the immediate things that make them the dopamine,
Yep.
yeah. And I think that like you said, seeking that relationship with God to fill that hole in you is a lot more, you know, long term and lasting. And like I am a teenager and I do go through things that are confusing to me. I do seek, sources of something to channel my feelings on. And I think like God has been that for me through and through because like you said, I do look for long-term things and like this is something that is very long-term in my life and has continued to help me through my toughest times. So,
Delora, it's tough to be
yeah.
a young person these days. There are so many options to choose from. And these options all kind of draw you in and capture you. And it's like being in a prison once they take over. And I don't know. I mean, it was easier in my day when I was younger. When I was your age, it was easy. It was not easy for me then, it seemed, but it was easier than what you all are going through at this time in your life. Simply because the world provides no guidelines. You're up to it. You have to discover. You have to find your own way. And you know, when I was in high school, I went to a high school in California, and I was the valedictorian, so I had to give the talk, for the senior class, and my speech was titled "I Want to Do It My Way." I want to do it my way. My parents, all the adults in the audience, were horrified. The graduating class stood up and cheered after I got through. They cheered for like a minute because that's how they felt too. They wanted to do it their way. So I tried to do it my way. And I ended up being expelled from medical school, ending up on the streets of San Francisco. And I lived under buildings there in the city outside of Golden Gate Park. And I was so sick, and it was all because I wanted to do it my way. I didn't listen to anybody. But in some respects, it gave me these experiences that now, as I look back on, really provide rich experience that now I know I don't want to do it my way because my way just doesn't work. It's God's way that works.
Mm-hmm.
And why shouldn't it? If he created us, if he knows every aspect of us and loves us, all these rules and regulations are only there because he loves us. He wants us to live an abundant life. And it's only by these rules and regulations that you can live that life, given all of what is going on around us now.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's really powerful and insightful as well to hear. And I do think like a lot of it is definitely God's plan to like show us through experiences and the trials and tribulations of everything. And to hear like your story, I had no idea. That's really powerful. And I think like you said, like I don't know if my like teenagers are necessarily more difficult. I think that's just like different, so different because of the aspect of like social media and technology. It's just a huge part of life for a teenager right now, and it's something that obviously like isn't going to be going away anytime soon. And maybe some find social media to maybe use it as a means to strengthen their religious connections or find spiritual content. But I think that many may end up feeling more isolated through it. So do you think that digital spaces can be used to foster religion, or do you think that they pose more risks than benefits?
I think social media is great. I mean, we could have never in my day reached as many people as you're going to reach with your podcast. It naturally, there are aspects of social media. It can be isolating if that's all you do. But if you combine social media with in-person interactions, I mean, that's great. It can really help you. and you can meet people with similar interests. And sometimes that's a problem, but most of the time it's not a problem. You want to be connected with healthy people. You don't want to necessarily be connected with sick people and follow their sickness. You want to be connected with people who are healthy, who are living a full life, and who can help you live a full life. And those are many times people of faith. Nothing more is there's nothing more important. I've got a book out with my wife, my second wife now. Is called Nothing More Important. And you can get it on Amazon. I think it's $8. But it talks about faith and how important it is in life, and how my wife and I struggled for many years. We've had a hard marriage, and she's very honest about it too, as she describes her story. And I was once I had kind of found God, I was on fire. I mean, I wanted to do nothing but do the research, serve patients and bring them to this experience of this abundant life in God. And I neglected my family as a result. And she suffered for many years. We're now, getting it together because I'm getting it together. And I realize now, how important my wife is and in my whole life, and even in the work that I do, she plays a critical role in that. And so I've learned to put her first. It's tough. It still is tough because I love what I'm doing so much, but I don't want her to sacrifice her for my profession and my work. I can't do that. God doesn't want me to do it.
Yeah, I don't know if humility is the word, but the self-awareness and understanding that you have of both your work and your family and everything, that's something that I know that comes with maturity, but it also, I think that your relationship, correct me if I'm wrong, but your relationship with God has fostered that so much. And I think that's something that a lot of people, in my generation could benefit from so much. It's not necessarily just about getting older and learning, that through experience, but it's also about understanding through your faith, the importance of self-awareness and,
I
family.
agree with you.
Yeah.
I agree with you totally. The scriptures say, love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. Who is your closest neighbor if it's not your spouse and your children? Mm-hmm. Who is your closest neighbor? They are your closest neighbor. And in fact, in one of the versions of the Gospels, it says, love God with all your heart, mind, strength, and self. And the second great commandment is like it. It's like the first great commandment. Love your neighbor as yourself. So, your closest neighbor is your family. Yeah. And that's close to loving God. I mean, mm-hmm. That's literally close to the commandment to love God.
Mm-hmm. And even through people's, family struggles, I think that's something definitely teenagers deal with a lot. You always know that you have that relationship with God right there for you.
Yeah. Family struggles, believe me.
Yeah.
They can be challenging.
Yeah. It's definitely something that comes with it. I wanted to ask a little bit about human flourishing, because that concept to me is fairly new, for the past year or so, or 2 years maybe. I never heard of it before. And I think maybe a lot of people listening to this might relate to that. They've never heard of human flourishing. They don't know what it is. And I just wanted to see if you could talk about that a little bit and your experiences with it.
So I actually, within the month, I will be publishing a book titled Human Flourishing, A Guide for the Christian Community. And in it, I'll be describing a program that we're doing actually at Liberty University in Virginia, a program that consists of 8 different interventions that we are going to administer to the entire student body, the 140,000 students at Liberty University, hopefully someday. And it's the 8 interventions, and the idea is to produce a flourishing environment that produces flourishing people. And those 8 interventions, if I can remember them here, and I describe them, in great detail in this book, Human Flourishing. The first one is relationship with God, developing a transformative relationship with God. The second one is the 30-day kindness challenge. So this is a 30-day program where you have to not say anything negative. You choose one person that you want to develop your relationship with. You don't say anything negative to them. No criticism of the person for 30 days. Even if they need to be corrected. Nope, you can't do it. Or if you do it, you have to do it in a very gentle, kind manner. So nix the negatives. Don't say anything negative to them. Number 2, praise. Praise them. Look for things that you can praise them for. You have to search for them, but find them and express praise. Tell them how much, how nice they look, what nice clothes they have on, or what a great thing that they did for, doing something good in the community or whatever. And then finally, acts of kindness. So you have to do these. You have to do an act of kindness, something that you ordinarily would not do for the person that they would appreciate. You do these 3 things: no criticism, praise, and acts of kindness for 30 days in order to develop a habit. And it literally transforms relationships if you can do it for 30 days. So we train people in groups to learn how to do this. So that's the second one. Then there's a program, intervention on appreciation, showing appreciation to people in the workplace or in school or with your professors. So showing appreciation. And then there's gratitude. That's the 4th one, being grateful. So we have, again, these are all in groups of about 10 to 12 students, and they're spending 2 hours a week for 4 weeks, basically, learning how to be grateful. And then there is character development and, values. So there's an intervention that helps you realize what are your character strengths and how do you develop new character strengths. And then there's another one that's on forgiveness. So it shows you, how to forgive, how you go about forgiving people that have hurt you, may have hurt you deeply, because, the burden of resentment and lack of forgiveness is very heavy to carry. And that's probably why Jesus spent a lot of time saying how important it was to forgive people and not harbor resentment, because it destroys a person's mental health. Then the 7th one is on humility, how to be humble, and then the final one is on happiness and how the brain and the body contributes to happiness. And it's a whole program by a person by the name of Dr. Amen, A-M-E-N, Dr. Amen. He has clinics all over the world where he treats patients and he does brain scans. And he's been able to take a person's, personality traits and connect them to their brain scan. And he can then advise people about how to live a happy life. And part of that has to do with faith and their spiritual life. Yeah. So those are the 8 interventions that we plan on implementing in a randomized controlled trial where we randomize students to either a control group that doesn't get the intervention or a group that gets the intervention, and then we'll statistically compare them after 30 days at the end of the semester and maybe even towards the end of their university career, and just see how it impacts that. So that's what we're planning. I'm very excited about it. We're hoping that other universities will pick this up and start doing this as well across their student bodies.
Well, yeah, I mean, I know for a fact that these 8 things, like implementing these things in I'm talking about teenagers specifically just because that's the only perspective I can speak from, but that would be so important. Like I'm going through something with a friend right now, and I'm trying not to look at it from the lens of someone who's been hurt, but more so like how I can understand why she would have made that decision and trying to be more forgiving, trying not to say bad things about her, even though like that might make me feel better in the moment. It's
Yeah.
not worth it in the long run. So I don't know. I'm just tying it into things that kind of are relatable for a lot of adolescents right now. Like it's just friendship issues, family issues, things like that that pop up all the time. Looking at it from a different perspective, maybe. So I think those 8 things would help in so many people's lives with the big things that come across, the big challenges, or even the small.
I would try it out. I mean, it couldn't hurt to try out that
Yeah.
30-day kindness challenge.
Hmm.
She's got a book, Shanti Feldhahn is the name of the author of the book, and she's got a website and everything, but the 30-day kindness challenge. Get her book, study it, and then choose that friend. And in 30 days, I will promise you that relationship with that person will be transformed.
Yeah.
I mean, it really, truly works. Really works. I've done it with my wife, and it's just made a miraculous difference in our feelings about each other.
Yeah.
You can't change another person, but if you do this 30-day kindness challenge, they can't help but change. They can't help it. They will change because it's so powerful. It's so powerful, the kindness challenge. And it's just about loving your neighbor. That's really all it's about.
I'll definitely make sure to check it out. I think
Yeah.
it could be really powerful in my life. So, this conversation overall has been like incredibly eye-opening for me, and I think a lot of people who are listening. If a teen maybe right now is listening and they're struggling with maybe their mental health, just their overall well-being, or feeling lost, what's one piece of advice you'd give them about using religion as a source of healing? Like, what's one more thing you could kind of take with them, they could take with them?
I think they should, I don't know, I think they should look into developing their relationship with God. That's the first commandment. And it's the first commandment in many different religions, not just Christianity. It's the first commandment in Judaism, in Islam, and to some degree, even in Buddhism and Hinduism. The emphasis is on developing a personal relationship with God, and it will transform your life.
Mm-hmm.
Now it requires work but the amount of effort you put in that relationship will pay off 100-fold in whatever you're struggling with. Develop your connection with God. I did 40 years ago when I was depressed and didn't know where to go. I started reading the Living Bible. The Living Bible is easier to read and it was literally like, it spoke to me. It just spoke volumes to me that filled that empty space in my heart. And I think if you give it a try, give it a try. What the heck? How can it hurt to develop your relationship with God? It can't. It's why you're here. It's why you're here on this planet at this time. And this is a critical time, I think. Really a critical time. And it needs young people excited about their faith, that the previous generation really wasn't. They've been departing from religion and faith, but may this generation be the generation that brings people back back to where they're supposed to be, where they were created to be.
Mm-hmm. Completely agree. Dr. Koenig, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom today. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on this podcast, and I think it will be very eye-opening for a lot of people just going through like the everyday challenges of life who don't even know where to start with it. So,
Thank you, Delara, and thank you for being such a, for even having this podcast to try to help your generation. They're not going to listen to me, but they might listen to you.
I think they should listen to you. You have a lot of really important things to say, a lot of good books, a lot of that I will definitely be checking out, a lot of important research. So,
Sounds good. Okay, Delara, you take care.
thank
God
you.
bless.
That brings us to the end of this episode of The Examined Life, Gen Z Engages Philosophy.